Now we move on with our next session, Identify, and I would like to welcome all of our speakers who will help us to shed light on different issues. First of all, I would like to welcome Dimitris Karavasilis. Dimitris is our international trade advisor and founder and CEO of DK Market and then Diamantis LLC. Hello, Dimitris. Dimitris will be talking to us about the U.S. consumer profile. Next, we will move on to Ms. Laura Strange, Senior Vice President, Communications and External Affairs from the National Grocers Association. Good morning, Laura. Laura, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
Good morning, Laura.
Good morning.
And we have the honor to have with us today Mr. Ted Diamantis, President of Diamond Wine Importers, who will give us the perspective of the U.S. importer. Good morning, Ted.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so first of all, I would like to start with Dimitris, and there will be an initial input of all the panelists, and then we will proceed with the Q&A section. So, Dimitris?
Thank you, Dina. Good morning to everyone, Laura and Ted, and good afternoon to all of you. We are going to approach some insights, consumer insights for the US market, and we have to take into consideration always that US market is a whole continent that is consisted of smaller states and areas. So let's keep this in our mind, and I'm going through our presentation that we have prepared for you. So the US consumer profile by generations, this is what we are trying to approach. So we have reflects from 2022, and there is a big change in how people consume and buy products and services, copyrights. The omni-channel shopping is becoming the norm, and the 45% of consumers say that social media is influencing their purchases. The consumer consider the product price, the product availability, and the shopping convenience. So to be the three most important factors that influencing the purchasing decisions, and this is in general. For getting a great deal on a product's price is what American consumers value above everything else, and this is something that we are running a lot of service with Idea Monkeys for big retail brands in the United States, and this is more than obvious, especially after COVID and, of course, the upcoming year. There are some standards that seems to dominate in 2022. Me mentality, the international localism, as we call it, and intentional spending. So the baby boomers that was born from 55 to 64, they hold the majority of the US disposable income still, and all these data are the last updated data of last month. So the baby boomers, they really more on in-store shopping, where they can see and handle products before making a decision. Then it's the Generation X, 65 to 80, and they are equally comfortable using both traditional digital media channels, and as we call it, the physical and the digital, and they are using the both. Then we have that the Gen Xers won't be one with flashy advertising, but with Generation X, practically and proof of performance. So they are not influenced a lot from the flashes. Now, the millennials between 91 and 96, in the last 2 years, they have become the largest generation in the US workforce. So we have to highlight this because these are the target group, let's say, that companies have to deal with. The millennials, they need great customer service, unique experience and value for their money. And they most like to spend on cars, clothes, and retirement and housing than the previous generation. They have this is for less. The 9 out of 10 millennials believe it's important to eat healthy. So this suits to the Mediterranean diet more. Now the generation Z, the 59%, is willing to pay more for a product that is safe for the environment. So we can see the sensitiveness of this generation for sustainability. And the 97% say they use social media for shopping inspiration and not for influence, but especially for inspiration and what they have to deal with. So I ran really fast all these data, and what I would like to underline most is that these data are for in general, and of course we're going to discuss after about let's say state by state. Dina, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dimitri, for your presentation. And now we will move on to Ms. Laura Strange, who will provide us an overview of the U.S. grocery market. So, Laura, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. All right. So can everybody see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. So I thought first thing it'd be helpful to give an overview just of the state of the industry, touch a little bit on operating in this new normal that we're in, particularly as people are moving post-pandemic. COVID certainly still here and something that's on people's minds, but not in the ways that we saw in 2020 and 2021. And certainly that was driving a lot of consumer shifts and behaviors. And then also a future outlook where grocers might be moving and thinking as it pertains to not only their operations, but how they're addressing customers. Just a quick background on the National Grocers Association. So we represent independent community grocers and the wholesalers who service them, as well as a number of associate members and suppliers. So those are large CPG, consumer product good companies, as well as anybody who provides a service to the grocery store. But our main focus really is on advocating for the independent grocer. And we define an independent grocer as family-owned, privately held, and employee-owned grocery store. We've got members that are every single major grocery distributor wholesaler are a member of ours. We have more than 1,800 retail member companies in the US, and that equates to nearly 9,000 or more than 8,500 storefronts across the US and Puerto Rico. We also have grocer members in Canada. And we did an economic impact study that showed there are more than 21,000 independent community grocers across the US. You'll see on the slide the impact that they have. They create nearly 1.2 million jobs, pay $42 billion in wages, and $255 billion to the US economy. So a large economic footprint. But I think sometimes when you talk about numbers, it's best really to show a picture. And here you'll see some of the banners and some of the brands of our members. So when we talk about and think about the industry, certainly there were a number of external factors that are and still are leading to uncertain times. I was listening to a podcast this morning coming in, and they said disruption continues to be the word in every industry. So we still continue to see supply chain disruptions. A lot of that can be tied into what we're seeing that's going on over in Europe, as well as a labor shortage. and continued pressures from COVID too. I mentioned the labor shortage. A lot of people left the workforce during COVID. They're starting to re-enter, but one thing that we have that we're going to be facing soon is baby boomers are going to be exiting the workforce. So that's something when you talk to grocers, that's on their mind, is how they're going to keep their stores staffed so that they can service their customers. Inflation is certainly on consumers' minds, and it's impacting the industry as well. And then lastly, all of these disruptions and factors are changing consumers' behaviors. So what we saw during COVID was, and what we continue to see, are increased sales from grocers driven by some of the inflationary trends that we're seeing right now. However, our members, this excess cash flow that they have, it's allowing for them to reinvest in their stores and remodel. So we're seeing a lot of our members replacing their refrigerator systems. What they're doing is they're bringing in their prepared food services, and they're just creating these wonderful displays of prepared meals. So a lot of reinvestment in the store to address what the new customer demands are. Like I mentioned before, supply chain challenges really are still remain within the marketplace. They're driven by the labor shortages mostly, and then we're seeing rising costs of materials and goods, and that's all having an impact throughout the supply chain. Dimitris mentioned one of the qualities that consumers are looking for: product availability. And certainly that is something that our grocers are thinking about. One thing as they emerged from the pandemic and they're starting to operate in this new normal is they're taking time to really look at those items that flew off the shelves, the items that consumers identified as a replacement, and now it might become their item of choice. So there's really a rationalization of the shelves, of the SKU lines, what they're going to keep on those shelves. And then lastly, the COVID pandemic, it certainly accelerated e-commerce adoption. You had many people getting online, shopping online, becoming more comfortable with shopping online during COVID because they preferred to get their groceries online. What we're starting to see as a trend as we're emerging out from COVID is that while people are still shopping online, they're really splitting their trips. People do really want to go back into the grocery store. They want to see the produce. They want to feel the produce. They want to see and compare the different products that they have there, the different packaging sizes. But for those items where maybe they forgot at the grocery store, or it's a Wednesday night and their child wants a certain type of snack, they're turning to e-commerce for those purchases. But as we look to the future, certainly the shifts in consumer behavior is driving a lot of what grocers are thinking. What we're seeing is consumers are really reevaluating their current lifestyles and priorities. I know Dimitris touched on this again in some of his research, and so certainly validates what our grocers are seeing as well. And health and wellness has really been brought into a focus. A number of people are looking at food as medicine. I know during COVID, snacking and indulgences were a big part of the day-to-day life. But again, now there's this refocus really on health and wellness, plant-based products, those foods that are going to help consumers achieve that desired wellness goal. And some of it also, what we're seeing, it's not just physical health, it also ties back into the mental health aspect as well. Consumers, earlier this year, we saw research where consumers were intending to spend less out of the home in the next 12 months. So essentially that equates to eating more in home. So going to the grocery store, buying their foods, eating in home, and not necessarily going to the restaurants, which this makes sense because, again, inflation is certainly having an impact. It's costly to eat out. And so a grocery store became a really great alternative. Also, as grocery stores are starting to put more prepared foods in, that does become, and adopt more food service as well, that does become a good alternative for consumers. Consumers are looking for convenience as well as the best value. So I'm a working mom. I have 3 kids at home. And a lot of time what I'm thinking about when I'm shopping is my meal prep and how I'm going to cook for my kids. And sometimes picking up that side dish rather than making it from scratch is a little bit easier when you have 3 little ones running around and you're trying to make sure homework gets done on time. because consumers are seeing a little less in their wallets, again, due to inflation, what we're seeing is there's some trade-offs happening, and they're turning towards grocery store private label. But at the same time, while they might be turning towards grocery store private labels for a number of things, whether that's in the produce aisle or even in center store, I'm thinking some of your canned foods, they're turning to private label, but they're willing to still find those indulgences, still find those things. So, they might get something that costs a little less for a side meal, or maybe they'll trade out a piece of meat. Maybe instead of, a steak, they might trade out for chicken, but they're still looking for that really nice item that they can have to pull the meal together and complete the meal. As I touched on, and I think this is really important, in-home eating is continuing. Consumers really kind of got more comfortable with cooking at home. And so not only are they cooking at home, but they're also really kind of exploring different meals. So what you're seeing is, and I know I've seen it in my home, is as opposed to, some of those traditional meals that they've cooked, they're branching out and they're looking for some of those global type of cuisines and meals that they can provide for their families. And then what we're expecting to see, and what we've already seen from our grocers, is some of this grab and go options, the prepared food, other really innovative strategies to provide shoppers with mealtime solutions. People are celebrating again. They're getting together in their homes. We've seen, more gatherings for the holidays and also for special occasions, for graduations. And so what people are also looking for are those entertainment type options. E-commerce is going to be very important moving forward, or it is. COVID certainly, as I mentioned, accelerated that, but moving forward, it's got to be a seamless omni-channel experience. Both online and offline is going to be important. Again, touching on that product availability, making sure that what is available online for a consumer is also available online or in store for the consumer. So, consumers, they will shop on their phone, they'll research social media. And so when they are looking online, they expect to have somewhat of a similar type of product availability or experience in the store as well. And then this is certainly requiring grocers to look at their strategies for how they differentiate against competition, especially on the independent side. And a lot of that comes back to providing better service and doing that training with their associates so that they can excel in that customer experience. Value and convenience, there really is no one size fits all approach. However, we do recognize that consumers are going to be much more sensitive to price. They certainly were this year. We expect that to continue into 2023. And so this picture here, I think, really kind of captures that no one size fits all. It's laying out the different bundles for their consumers so that they can choose their meat bundles and choose what fits them, not only what their needs of their family is, but also their pocketbook. So grocers, particularly independents, are going to be looking at ways in which that they can deliver that value as well as the convenience for the shopper. So thank you. I'm happy to take any questions and appreciate being here today.
Thank you, Laura, for your rather comprehensive presentation. There were a lot of insights and trends inside. Thank you. And I would like now to pass the floor to Ted to provide us an overview of the U.S. wine market, and then we will proceed with the questions. Ted, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Amchen, for having this forum. Great opportunity to discuss on a great topic, great panelists, great information from Laura and Dimitris as well. What I'd like to discuss is kind of the on-ground, what we're seeing in real life, what is occurring in the marketplace today when it comes to wine sales, and specifically with Greek wine sales. Wine sales have been increasing year over year. We have an increase in per capita consumption in the United States, where we're about 11 liters per capita. That's not a huge number compared to where Europe's at. Europe's at around 42 liters per capita. So U.S. has a huge growth in terms of wine consumption ahead of itself. But we've seen a shift in the consumer and how they're spending their money and in what venues are spending their money. Because of COVID, we've seen more off-premise sales increase during the COVID period from 20 and partially of 21, but we've seen a strong demand occurring on premise in restaurants again over the last 2 years as well. This has been a challenge for growth a little bit because it's hard to identify where the consumer is shopping on a daily basis. It's been shifting, but today, as it's been historically, most wine purchasing has been occurring on the off-premise world, which means the retail world, which is about 75% of all cases being sold are in retail, and about 70% of all dollars being spent are in the retail world. As Greek wines go, we were traditionally and historically, Greek wines in the marketplace have been more positioned on the on-premise world and the restaurant world than in the off-premise world. This has shifted in the last 3 years because of the lack of restaurant, the ability for consumers that wanted their Greek wine fix to get it on the on-premise world. They've shifted and looked for it in the off-premise world. And this has given us a brief opportunity to Greek wines because in the past, retailers were hesitant to market or allocate floor space to Greek wines as they were not confident of the turnover or the ability of the consumer to absorb Greek wines. COVID proved them wrong. Now that we had the opportunity and people actually walked into the stores and created a pull, meaning they were coming into the stores and requesting Greek wines because they had no other ability to obtain them. Retailers are more apt today to market and have Greek wine sections in their stores and to have more labels on their shelves. So actually COVID, ironically, helped the Greek wine market in the United States by giving us more opportunities in retail. Today's market has been challenging because of everything that the prior two speakers and the prior speakers on the other panel has spoken about as well. So not to be redundant, but the logistics issues have created a large issue in the United States for wine. Consistency of product is now a big issue for most buyers because the supply chains have been stretched and because of the challenges of keeping stock all year round or for even month by month. Buyers are looking for alternatives. They're willing to do more experimental buying in terms of bringing in other regions, other producers. So it is a challenging environment in that the target is moving for us. But we need to be adaptive to this. The growth, though, for Greek wines, I believe there's going to be a huge opportunity going forward. There are a lot of factors to keep us competitive. We need to, as producers, as importers, we need to be aware of how and what we need to do to stay within this in the marketplace, because as the market changes, the whole world adapts. We have to always realize and understand that the U.S., as Dimitri alluded to, is not one consumer group. It's multiple consumer groups. It is different from region to region, state to state, and even within a state, the urban areas versus the rural areas. It is also the most competitive market in the world when it comes to wine. Every country in the world that produces wine is trying to market their wines to the U.S. consumer. Getting through the noise and getting the attention of the U.S. consumer is paramount to success. And because of the advent of social media and the ability to direct market to consumers, in one way it's made it easier, but in the other way it's made it more difficult because everybody is using these channels. And how do we get through that? So in the future of Greek products in the United States, or Greek wine in a more micro sense, is that we need to have a concerted marketing efforts to create a pull We could create a push, I'm sorry, but we need to also help reinforce the pull. That meaning that we have to understand how the marketplace works in the United States. And that is one of the biggest barriers or difficulties to try to have a Greek producer understand all this diversity of consumers and the marketplace and how structurally the U.S. market works when it comes to alcohol. There are specific rules and specific structures that you have to work within to be able to get your product through the system. So we have a 3-tier system in the United States, meaning that you have to have, it's a legal hierarchy. It is created through licenses, and you have to go through an importer, distributor, before you can approach a retailer. The only access for a consumer to obtain alcohol is through a retail situation, which is either on-premise, which is a restaurant, or off-premise, which is the retail shelf, supermarket, wine shop, or today direct-to-consumer sales, which is another big aspect of a new channel of selling wine to the consumer, which cannot be bypassed. So to be clear for people that are on this forum and listening that may not be familiar how the U.S. market works, you legally cannot jump from one level to the next. An importer cannot sell directly to the consumer. A distributor cannot sell directly to the consumer. An importer cannot, in most cases, sell directly to a restaurant or a retailer. They must go through a distributor. So this creates a much more difficult path to get to market. But that is the system that is in place in the United States today and for the foreseeable future. Having said all this, Greek wines and wine consumption, again, is on the rise. We have to also realize that the U.S. if you're not drinking wine, they're drinking a lot of other things. Craft spirits have been booming over the last, I'd say over the last 7 years or so. Craft beers have taken a step back, or they've been, for the most part, been purchased by larger beer companies, but beer is still a dominant force in the U.S. Consumer trend when it comes to alcohol consumptions, and also the flavored canned spirits and also seltzers and have been taking a big market share, mostly from beer, but it's also a generational thing. We see millennials and Gen Xers do more of the seltzers, less beer. And the other challenge going forward for the wine industry in the United States is that we see a declining consumption amongst consumers 25 and younger when it comes to alcohol in general. And we don't know where that's going to lead us in the next 10 to 15 years. We don't know if that consumer will gravitate towards any alcoholic product or discover wine later in life. But that's going to be a challenge for the next generation. In terms for the next 20 years, we think that Greek wines have a big role to play in the wine world of the United States. We believe that with the advent of the fad, I'm sorry, not the fad, but being in vogue of the Mediterranean diet being in vogue by the U.S. consumer, looking for all the things that Laura spoke about previously, looking at the consumer profile that Dimitris described a few moments ago. That is a big aspect, and it's something that Greece has to participate in. And this is about messaging, and it's about making sure that the U.S. consumer understands that Greece is the Mediterranean, that we are not just a fringe member, but we are a core member of that culture. That is on us to make sure that the U.S. consumer understands that and is very clear about that. So I would like to turn it over to Dina, and let's field some questions, and I'll give it back to the panel.
Okay, so thank you very much, Ted, for all your valuable insights and your input. You made specific points, and specifically as far as the diversity of the US market is concerned, it's exactly the question that I will now address to Dimitri. So, Dimitri, we all know that the US is the largest and most dynamic and diverse market in the world. It consists of 325 million consumers. So I would like to ask you, how much do you think that the consumer differ from state to state, and how much research, in-depth research, should be done in order to see its specific consumer behavior?
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Dina. As you know, we have prepared state-by-state workshops in order to present in the Greek audience and generally in Balkan area all these, let's say, features and all these aspects that every state has. Definitely, there is a really big mobility, and people that were staying in New York or were staying in Seattle, they are moving in Texas, or vice versa. And there is a really big mobility, and we can always see that, especially the generations, the generation after us, especially what we expect from Alpha generation, that they raised in a house with COVID. They feel that they have to fly away and to move to different places, so they will have the experience. So definitely, when we are talking about states, we're talking about a whole country. And United States, as it says, it's United States. It's not just one state with one profile, with one, let's say, cultural perception. So we have to understand that localization and the local, every area that we are going to try to position our brand or our company or our products. First of all, we need to study really well about the cultural, the ethics, and everything concerned the specific place, and also to understand the influence and also the religious issues and everything that has to do with the specific place. And what we actually say to a lot of our clients, that it is better to focus in a smaller, let's say, area, an urban area, with in order to test themselves and in order to understand better the local community and to offer to local communities, so as to bond their brand better in smaller places than to try to enter to really big groceries or to retail stores or wherever, because this, it's like a tango, it takes two to tango. It's not we have the best product in the world, we have the best grapes in the world, the best cucumber in the world, we are from Greece and everything, all doors are open. No, it's not like this. So definitely we need to focus, and we need also to insist, because this is not an action that with an exhibition or with if we say Ted's hand, we will have our product in all of retail store. And also Laura, if we meet Laura, next day we will be in Whole Foods, in Costco, everywhere in United States. No, it's not like this. All these people are helping us to understand better the insights. They are not going to sell our product for us. This is very important. So we have to listen and to try to study really a lot about the specific areas and regions that we are going to decide in order to position our brand.
Okay, thank you, Dimitri, for your input. And now I would like to address a question to Laura. Laura, over the last years, Greek grocery producers are making remarkable efforts to enter the US market, and to some extent they have succeeded. What is your estimate regarding Greek products and their potential in the US? And if you had one piece of advice to share with our Greek exporters, with our audience, what would that be?
Yeah, absolutely. So, excuse me. I think Dimitris made a great point. It takes two to tango, and so much of the grocery industry is really a relationship-based industry. Our members during COVID, they're unlike some of the larger chains, so they didn't see a number of the products that got diverted to some of the larger chains. So what we saw them do is, excuse me, is they reached out to other manufacturers, other suppliers, whether it be local suppliers or suppliers in different countries, and they started to establish those relationships so that they could source products for their customers. And also one thing too, I think another key differentiation between independent community grocers and some of the larger chains is that they're much more agile. They don't necessarily have that big corporate structure to report back up to. So they're able to get products, on their shelves, working with their grocery distributor, or even with the supplier. They can get some products on their shelves, and they can really test that market. So I would say really continuing to reach out, understanding the market, building the relationship. I also think there are important differences that were called out just regarding the United States and the different regions. But another thing I would say is that there's a huge opportunity. Americans really are looking for open borders. They're looking to travel. They're looking to explore, not only understanding other cultures and other countries, but some people in America are looking back at their heritage. And so they may have a grandfather or great grandfather that came over to the States from Greece, and now they're trying to tie back in and explore that heritage. And there's an opportunity because they have the internet, they're researching on their phone. So I listened in on some of the panel and heard about the growth in tourism. So again, there's some interest there, and that is creating a great opportunity.
Yes, thank you, Laura. And now I will move on to Ted. Ted, we all know that you are the man who made Greek wine imports into the US a great success. So we all thank you for that and for the exceptional work you've been doing for the last 25 years. And I would like to ask you, in this context, what are your decision criteria when it comes to decide with which green company you are going to collaborate with in terms of importing and distributing their products to the US? You are muted, Ted. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for the comment, Dina. But it's been a considered effort, and it's been a lot of people that have made Greek wines a success story in the United States. And it's only been a success story, even though we've been doing this for 30 years. It's really been a success story in the last 10 to 12 years as we've seen the actual fruits of our labor take hold in the United States. And when we do make a decision to work and bring a new product into the United States, there's a basket of things that we look at. Of course, we look at the quality of the product that's being produced by an individual producer, its uniqueness, how it fits into the market, its price point. We look at also scalability when it is taken into an account, because not every winery has to have scalability. There's a unique story that has to be told for each winery. We have to make sure that that story is compelling, real, and consistent. as Laura was talking about how products and how the consumers change, how they make their decisions on what products they choose, either whether it be from looking in their family tree or whether they're on, they've had some experience or they want or they're looking forward to having a new experience. A story is very, very important to talk to the consumer about, because that helps differentiate us from everything else in the marketplace. So those are factors. Packaging is one of the least factors that we look at, because packaging can always be tweaked, corrected, or changed according to what the consumer is looking for, and we can always lean into the producer and help them with that process. So the most important thing is having the right product in the bottle. Is it competitive in its category, not as a Greek wine, but in its category as a wine? Stylistically, what is it going against in the marketplace? For example, is it going against an established area like Sancerre in France, or New Zealand for Sauvignon Blanc, or an Austrian Gruner? Where does this product fit in the totality of the wine space? And is it competitive for its price point? Now, I hate using that factor in determining or having the people that are listening to this forum think that we need to be the cheapest. That's not what I'm saying. It has to be competitive within its category. And we're never, as Greece, are going to be a commodity product, a low value product. First of all, we shouldn't be in that space. It shouldn't be in that sandbox. Secondly, we physically cannot create wines in that world. And third, we are and should be and continue to present ourselves as a premium, ultra premium product. That doesn't. It might be somewhat less interesting for people to think that we can only are products that are just for a certain segment, but we can never be a large producing country that can afford low price wines in the marketplace. We can't create those kind of wines, nor do we want to be in that space. So price point is very important in terms of being competitive within its subset, or within its set of competitive products. So those are the factors that we look for. And then lastly, what we look for is the people behind the wine. There is an important factor is that when we deal with the new producer, that these producers understand the market they're going into, understand the consumer that they're directing their product to, understand the process of how the system works, understand that it is a marathon and not a sprint, so it takes time to invest and establish yourself in the marketplace. And they have to understand that they will grow into the market, and that the market is not necessarily, as Dimitris mentioned earlier, that they're waiting with bated breath for Greek products. The consumer in the United States is today a more educated consumer by far than it was 10 years ago, and especially 30 years ago. But it also has to be directed in what to look at, because of all the input that it's getting on a daily basis. The U.S. consumer has a lot of things being thrown at them, and we need to, again, cut through the noise and position ourselves, and that takes patience, and that takes time. But we have one of the greatest tools at our disposal that nobody else in the world has, and that is the country of Greece, and that's what we use as our marketing tool. Tourism, that has been mentioned many times so far, is going to be our biggest ally going forward, as long as the tourists that come to the United States, which we've seen in the last 3 years grow exponentially in 19, in 21, and in 22. The U.S. tourism has exploded in Greece because of 14 direct flights from U.S. Cities to Athens and other destinations within Greece. As long as the experience they have when they go to Greece, which has been a very positive experience, and we've seen the change over the last 10 years in terms of what happens when a U.S. tourist comes to Greece, what experience they're having, especially about food and wine. The hospitality world in Greece has exploded. It is by far one of the greatest experiences on the planet. And this will help the U.S. consumer when it comes back be invigorated, be interested, be engaged in Greek products. This is not something that is a crazy concept. We've seen it with Italy many decades ago. We've seen it in Spain over the last 20 years. And now we're going to see it in Greece. And this has been the most exciting part. And I think building this foundation over 30 years and now finally seeing this come to fruition is the most exciting thing. And so those are the factors we look at when we look at new producers.
Dina, may I just jump in really quickly? Because I think Ted makes a really good point about the message and telling the story behind the product. And this certainly is, applies to wine, but it also can apply to a number of different products, oil, sauces, is explaining to the consumer how to use it. So Americans are certainly very global curious. But I think sometimes when they're looking at different types of cuisines, they can shy away because they don't know how to use it, prepare it, what it goes with. And so I think telling that story of getting them comfortable and familiar with it and how to properly, prepare the meal or enjoy a wine with their meal is really important as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I totally agree with you. Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Dimitri, for being here with us today. And it's been a great discussion. Thank you again for your time and for sharing your expertise with our audience. And now we will move on with the next session. And I pass the floor to Dimitri to welcome the panelists of the next session.